Okay, this is two boys at in a 100-120 class, and this is technical material. This is what was a portion of this was a write and read assignment for today, and it's not counted. We'll read it very slowly, and this is about asbestos. So let's start here. And some of this will be repeated, and some of this is you haven't hit yet on the record. And it's not counted, but just follow my speech. Just specifically with respect to welders and people working in the welding industry, can you offer your opinions as to when what information was available and when companies working in that industry should know the dangers of asbestos associated with that specific work?
Well, I don't view it quite that way. I mean, I think any company whose commerce involved asbestos should have been aware of asbestos as a potential hazard to workers exposed to it, certainly by the early 1950s, regardless of whether they're a welding company or a supply company or a glove company or any other kind of company. If the workers had asbestos exposure, I think they should have been aware of it, at least aware about potential hazards by the early 1950s.
What specifically are your opinions as it relates to information was in the literature and what it was saying as it relates to exposures associated with doing welding work?
Let's see. I'm going to look at my welding file. I don't know that there was a whole lot about asbestos in welding specifically. That probably didn't appear until the 60s at least. Let's see. I mean, I got an article in here I'm looking at from 1954, Zimke, Z-I-E-M-K-E. It's in that list. I mean, it mentions asbestos was a hazard to welders. That may be one of the earliest ones. I don't remember if there was anything in the earlier ones that mentioned welders uniquely in terms of asbestos hazards.
Okay. How does the Shears and Templeton's effects of asbestos in dockyard workers support your opinions in this case as it relates to the state-of-the-art literature on exposures encountered by welders?
Well, let's see. I mean, some of the later articles, let's look at Shears here. Some of the later articles looked at a report of asbestos-related disease among different shipyard occupational categories. And I think Shears reported, experienced welders as having, I think, asbestos exposure. Let's see. I think it's in that context. I think later on some of the Selikoff articles did the same thing. I think that's the context.
The context of those articles, are they just that you're referencing? Shears and Selikoff, are those addressing exposure welders had from their own personal work, their hands-on work from asbestos? or bystander exposure to others working with asbestos?
You know, it's probably both. I don't know that they broke it down that carefully. Clearly, they have bystanders. That was always a concern, but also they did handle, it became known that welders, at least historically, had handled some asbestos containing welding rods and obviously gloves, welding blankets, that kind of thing. That became recognized a little later, probably in the 70s.
And looking specifically with respect to your gloves, clothing, and blankets index, what, if any, articles are on here that support your opinion as it relates to when a welding supply company knew or should have known the dangers associated with the product they were selling? Okay, this is some timed dictation now to voice, and this will be at 1:20. I will be the question
And the answer?
on the record. Would you please state your name for the record?
My full name is Tony Shirk.
Mr. Shirk, have you ever given a deposition before?
No.
I am going to go through some of the basic rules and make this go easy. The court reporter sitting next to me is taking down everything that you say today and what everybody in the room says in a written form. As a result of that, it makes the record much more clean if we don't talk over each other. So if you could let me finish the question, I will ask you a question before you start your answer.
Okay, thank you.
What is your current address?
16 Park Place, Newton, Indiana, 46341.
Do you plan on moving anytime in the near future?
No.
What is your highest level of formal education?
2 years of college.
Did you attain a degree after 2 years?
No.
Where did you graduate high school?
Porter.
Have you had any post-high school formal training, other education besides the 2 years of college?
No.
I understand in this case that you were the safety director at Miller Roofing. Did you have any specific training or education related to safety issues?
Yes.
What was that?
There were several. One class would be on confined space. Another class would be on electrical hazards or arc hazards. Another class would be on fall protection.
Would those be classes that you took while you were employed at Miller Roofing?
Yes.
Were you the safety director anywhere else prior to Miller Roofing?
No.
After Miller Roofing?
No.
Have you ever been convicted of a felony or misdemeanor involving fraud or dishonesty?
No.
Have you ever been convicted of a felony or misdemeanor involving fraud or dishonesty?
No.
Did you serve in the military?
Yes.
What branch?
Army.
What was your form of discharge?
Honorable.
What year was that?
1977.
What was your MOS?
72 Echo.
And formally referred to as?
Well, I am a teletype operator.
So it was in communications.
Yes, I was a signal corporal.
Okay.
Yes, it's formally signal corporal.
Did you review any documents or photographs in preparation for your deposition today?
Yes.
And what did you review?
Both documents and photos.
What documents did you review?
Witness statements, accident reports,
Were these statements and reports that you took?
myself.
Where did you obtain those documents? If I may, those were at our office. They comprise the documents that were provided by Miller Group to Central Crane's notice of production, as well as production requests. So all the documents and the photographs that you reviewed in preparation for your deposition have been produced as a part of discovery?
Yes,
Okay, other than your attorney who is sitting here today, or anybody from his office, have you talked to anybody concerning your deposition?
no, wait a minute. Yes, I did. I did talk to Mr. Peterson and let him know that my deposition was today,
When did you speak to Mr. Peterson?
yesterday.
And what was said?
I just told him that I was coming in today for the deposition. That was it.
And what did he say?
Okay.
Did he tell you anything about what's going on in the case?
No,
Did he tell you anything about his testimony?
no.
When did you begin working for Miller Group?
It was 5 years ago. My last day there was December the 28th of last year. So it was exactly 5 years before. It was September, I believe.
What was your position when you joined Miller Group?
Actually, I was his driver. He is legally blind.
So you were originally hired to be Mr. Peterson's driver?
Correct.
Okay, I understand that the Miller Group consists of multiple entities. Did you work for a particular one of those entities, or I should say divisions?
Later, all of them being the safety director, the roofing division, and the sheeting division.
That's what I was curious about. So you were safety director over all the divisions of Miller Group,
Yes,
and you left Miller Group on, you just said, December 28th, is that correct?
yes.
Why did you leave?
I wanted to drive a truck. I drive a gasoline tanker now.
For whom?
Atlas Oil Company.
Is that the first company you worked for after you left Miller Group?
Yes,
And you're a driver right now?
yes,
Did you have a CDL prior to beginning work at Miller Group?
yes,
So your first title with Miller Group was basically a driver?
correct.
How long did you remain in that position?
My whole time when I wasn't driving Miller, I would pick them up in the morning. We would ride to work together, and then I would go on about my business, and he would go on about his. And at the end of the day, I would take him home.
At what point during your employment did your role evolve into safety director as well as driver?
Roughly 6 months to a year. I kind of gradually went into it because I had a background with DOT safety because my background is trucking all my life.
Let's talk about that for a minute. What other certificates other than CDL did you have prior to beginning employment with Miller Group?
None.
Did you have a hazmat certificate as part of your CDL?
Yes,
Any others?
all of them. You mean, yeah, I had a hazmat doubles, triples.
I am just curious as to what licensure or certifications you had that relate to the driving that you had when you entered into your employment with Miller Group. So if they are endorsements, then that's what you can refer to them as. You know better than me, so by all means.
You can call them endorsements. I've had safety awards for safe drivers in the past. I can't produce them, but I've had them.
You said you have a DOT background in safety. What do you mean by that?
The DOT rules for trucking,
So,
load securements, you know, hours of service and stuff like that.
okay, different material. This will be just a little bit faster. I'm going to be writing about 130, 135 on the record. Ms. Jones, it is very important to be precise here. So I am going to ask you some clarifying questions. Is that okay with you?
Yes, it's okay with me.
Good. Now, I want to nail down what happened at the door. Does the door go right out from the store into the street?
No, there is sort of vestibule between the street door and the inside door.
Okay, then at which door did the incident occur? The door to the street or the door from the vestibule into the store?
It occurred inside of the store to the vestibule.
Just to be clear, are you saying the accident occurred at the door from the inside of the store to the vestibule?
Yes, that's where the accident happened.
As you approached the door, did it open?
Yes, it did.
From your perspective, was there anything unusual about the way the door opened?
No, not that I recall.
Now, after it opened, did you start to walk through it?
No, not that I recall.
Now, after it opened, did you start to walk through it?
I did.
What happened next?
Instead of the door going to the right to exit out, it went to the left and hit me on my right arm and shoulder.
Now, let's back up for just a second regarding how that particular door opens. Does it open so that it swings away to your right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, now on the night in question, did the door open completely?
Yes.
To the best of my recollection, I remember your saying that. In other words, you would say that the door went from a completely closed position to a completely open position. Is that correct?
Yes, it did. Instead of the door opening to the right to exit so I could leave, it went to the left and hit me on the arm and shoulder of my right side.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that I understood you precisely. You mean the door opened normally?
Yes, the door opened as it always did.
Did it stay open?
It stayed open, but instead of the door swinging to the right for me to exit the store, it came back to the left and hit me on the right arm and right shoulder.
Okay, now bear with me for a moment. What I've got here so far is that the door is completely in an open position, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And you were walking through the door while it was in this completely open position, correct?
When I started through the door, that's correct.
So the door did stay open in that position for some period of time?
Yes, for a very short period of time.
Could you estimate how long the door stayed in that fully open position?
Maybe a second.
Okay, and then what did the door do?
After about a second, instead of it opening to the right for me to exit out of the store, it swung back to the left and hit me on my left arm and shoulder.
So what you are saying is that the door did not stay open until you got through it. Have I got that right?
No, I mean, yes, you have got that right. The door did not stay open until I got through it.
Did it close completely?
It started to close as I was coming through the door.
Okay, here we go. We're going to repeat a little bit and continue on same material, same speed. Here we go. So what you are saying is that the door did not stay open until you got through it. Have I got that right?
No, I mean, yes, you have got that right. The door did not stay open until I got through it.
Did it close completely?
It started to close as I was coming through the door.
after the door opened and stopped in an open position, how long did it stay in that position?
Approximately 1 second, or maybe a little less or a little more. I really couldn't judge such a small amount of time very accurately.
Okay, but in that 1 second or whatever amount of time the door actually stayed open, what were you doing?
I was on my way out the door because I thought the door was going to keep on going to the right. I had no idea it was going to swing back to the left.
As you were walking through the door, was it still opening or had it completely opened already?
It had completely opened already.
So according to your best recollection, the door completely opened and stayed that way for approximately 1 second. Is that right?
Yes, that's about right. Although, as I said, I can't be precise about the exact amount of time.
But after that, the door started back in the other direction. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
Now, during that second or so that the door was still, were you walking?
Yes, I was walking through the door.
Okay, now when the door started coming back towards you, where were you in comparison to the threshold of the door frame?
I was right at the threshold. I was over it.
Did you actually see the door begin to swing back at you?
I sure did, but it was a complete surprise. I was not expecting it.
When the door started swinging back towards you, what did you do?
I was just like paralyzed. I couldn't believe it.
Did you do anything?
I was just walking and it just hit me on my arm.
At the time that you started to see the door coming back or starting to close, did you continue to walk?
Yes, I continued walking toward the street.
Did the door actually strike you?
It most certainly did. It knocked my coffee cup out of my hand.
What part of the door struck your body?
The middle part of the door.
Just so we're clear, are you talking about the middle part of the outside edge of the door or the middle of the door panel itself?
The middle part of the outside edge of the door.
And where did it strike your body?
Right here on my right arm and on my shoulder.
Okay. Did the door strike you anywhere else?
No, it struck me on the right arm and shoulder only.
How many times did the door strike you?
Just the once, that's all. I was in so much pain.
Okay. Can you tell us what happened to your body after you were struck?
It seemed like my whole right arm and shoulder and the whole right side of my body was hurting and in pain.
When the door came into contact with your body, did the door stop or did you move backward? Or how did that work?
The door stopped right on my arm.
But you were still walking at that time, is that correct?
Yes, I was still walking.
I hope you used your briefs for right arm, right side.
I did for right